We meet Tuka Memori, a kid who prefers to remain unnoticed, largely due to his traumatic upbringing and abusive parents. This has led him to live a life of isolation, instinctively trying to blend into the background and avoid any trouble. Currently, the class president Sugo is being harassed by the school bully Oyamada, who has taken her book for no apparent reason. The rest of the class, including a disengaged teacher, shows no interest in helping her. Everyone remains indifferent to her plight. Seeing no one else stepping up to defend Sugo, Memori decides to take a rare stand, summoning his courage, and asks Oyamada to return the book. Oyamada is surprised that someone like Memori, who usually keeps to himself, would dare to confront him. Just as Oyamada is about to turn his bullying attention to Memori, the class's popular student, Takuto, intervenes. Takuto, known for his influence and confidence, tells Oyamada to cut it off and give back her book. Oyamada attempts to gain favor with Takuto by saying he wants to put Memori in his place as a background character. However, Takuto has no intention of letting that happen. To be clear, Takuto doesn't care about Memori or Sue, he just doesn't want Oyamada causing any more trouble because it's annoying. Oyamada doesn't like it, but since Takuto is the leader, he has no choice but to listen and settle down. However, needing to keep himself entertained, he quietly starts bullying the kid across from him, Yasu. Finally, the teacher speaks up and tells Oyamada to stop messing with Yasu, though it's clear he doesn't really care, and tells Yasu to not jump off the bridge for as long he is their teacher. Things become quiet on the bus, but suddenly, all the students are transported to a new room where they are greeted by the goddess Vicious. She explains that she summons brave warriors to fight the evil demon emperor whenever he appears. The last time the demon appeared was 200 years ago, and he was defeated by the efforts of past heroes. However, the demon has been revived once more, and she pleads with the students to help her defeat this new demonic threat. The students are completely bewildered by what has just happened and wonder if they have actually died. The teacher tells them to calm down and listen to the goddess. While the goddess appreciates the teacher's respect, it becomes clear that he is more interested in other matters. Memori takes a moment to process the situation, realizing that seeing a goddess in person is unprecedented and does not feel like a dream. He confirms to himself that they are indeed in another world. Takuto asks the goddess if they are expected to defeat the great demon emperor and what would happen if they choose not to cooperate. The goddess responds that she unfortunately does not have the means to send them home if they refuse to become heroes. However, there is still a way for them to return to Earth. This involves performing a reverse summoning ritual that requires an evil element. The only way to obtain this evil element is to extract it from the heart of the demon emperor or to absorb it as it is released upon his death. Oyamada interrupts, saying that this situation has nothing to do with them and that no one cares about the demon emperor. We then see the goddess getting on her knees, begging for their help. Sugo introduces herself and explains that they are just students and might not be of much use against the demons. Vicious tells her not to worry about that, since they have been bestowed with powers unique to humans in this world. They all find this hard to believe. To prove the existence of special abilities, Vicious decides to give a demonstration. She calls for a prisoner to be brought out, and then a demonic beast, which proceeds to devour the prisoner. After the beast has mauled the prisoner, Vicious casts a fireball to incinerate it. This demonstration is meant to traumatize the students enough to accept that they are in a new world. Once the students are convinced, Vicious directs their attention to a crystal ball which will evaluate their abilities. One by one, the students step up to the crystal ball and their abilities are assessed. All of them show decent aptitude. Notably, when Oyamada approaches the crystal ball, it glows a brilliant red, indicating he is exceptionally powerful by the standards of this world. Next up is Takuto, who, upon touching the crystal ball, causes it to shatter completely, leaving everyone in shock. Confused by the recent events, the goddess explains that Tuto's rating as S-rank signifies he is at the top tier of power, above everyone else. Having even one S-rank hero is considered extremely fortunate. As the aptitude test continues, it is revealed that Sue is also S-rank, but it doesn't stop there. Another girl is also revealed to be S-rank, making 3 in total. The goddess is astonished and asks who the next person will be. When the protagonist steps up and places his hand on the crystal, it glows a faded purple. He asks the goddess about his rank, but she ignores him and moves on to the next person. Memori is accustomed to being ignored and treated as a background character. He then notices that the last person to be evaluated is Yasu. The goddess mentions a past figure known as the Dark Hero, once considered the strongest, which excites Yasu as he believes his time has come. The goddess instructs everyone to open their stats, revealing that Memori has weak stats and is ranked E. Upon closer inspection, Memori notices he has an inherent skill. Inherent skills are unique to each hero and can often be used immediately. As Vicious announces that they will perform a crucial ritual for their success, she calls Memori forward and explains that he is just an E rank. History has shown that the lowest ranks often hold back higher ranked heroes, so they are typically marked for disposal. The goddess explains that disposing of him right there would be too shocking for the others. Instead, she decides to give the lowest ranked heroes another chance by sending them to specific ruins via a magic circle. She tells him that if he manages to return alive, they will grant him the right to live freely. Memori asks if the ruins are dangerous, and Vicious confirms that they are, as most evil heroes and criminals are sent there. Memori tries to talk his way out of this, mentioning his inherent skill of abnormal status endowment, hoping it might be useful to the team. However, the goddess dismisses this, explaining that abnormal status spells and skills are almost always ineffective and not very useful in this world. Desperate, Memori appeals to the goddess's morality, arguing that she can't just dispose of him when she summoned him there without his consent, but she doesn't care about any of that. As Memori is stressed about his fate, Yasu touches his shoulder. Memori thinks Yasu is going to help by standing up for him since he had helped him before when he was getting bullied. However, now that Yasu has power, he starts acting like a jerk, just like the other classmates who tell Memori to get lost already. Accepting his fate, Memori stands up and Vicious gives him a magical bag, which is given to all the heroes. Sugo steps up for him and tells Vicious that everything she is doing is wrong. But the goddess, having made up her mind, just knocks Sugo out so she can't speak anymore. Memori can't bear the anger, so he uses his magic paralysis skill against her, but she immediately blocks it with her barrier, which can automatically defend against abnormal state spells. She makes fun of Memori for failing his attack and, without further delay, she wants everyone to witness as this loser is teleported to his end. Just then, Takuto fires off a blast. As the goddess looks over to him, he clarifies that he isn't trying to save him or anything. He just wanted to test out his new powers and didn't realize it would do that much damage. Some of Memori's classmates are happy from watching him be disposed of, while others remain indifferent. The one person who supported him was knocked out, so as he is about to be teleported, Memori gives up on being a loser and acts by giving Vicious the middle finger, vowing to make her regret this someday. Memori wakes up in the abandoned ruins and tries to open his status screen, but his system tells him that he is unable to do so because of the low level of light in the area. That's when he remembers the bag he got from her, so after pouring a little mana into it, it generates enough light for him to see again. But, as he's walking around, he stumbles across a human skeleton on the ground, and whoever killed the skeleton is still in the ruins. Memori is on edge now. He ends up tripping over some rocks, and it's a good thing he did because that allowed him to narrowly evade a sneak attack from a terrifying monster. He has no time to think or worry about where he's running to. Memori ends up slipping over a rock, and as the monster comes closer to him, the emotion he's feeling isn't fear but rather frustration. Frustration at the fact that he was betrayed by all those jerks in his class and is doomed to die because of it. He has no weapons to fight back with and no useful skills to use, since his abnormal status effects are apparently unlikely to work. However, that doesn't mean he's not going to try and use whatever he can to survive. So, Memori casts paralysis on the monster, and to his astonishment, it actually works. He doesn't want to stick around, so he runs away quickly. As he does this, he thinks to himself that the paralysis must have been a one-time fluke since Vicious said abnormal status effects have a low success rate. But in his haste to escape, Memori ends up running into another monster, which looks like a cross between a chicken and a roach. Whatever it is, it will kill him if he doesn't do something quickly. So Memori raises his hand and casts paralysis again, fully expecting it to fail, but miraculously it works again. Once could be a fluke, but 2 times in a row means his effect success rate is way higher than what the goddess had claimed. It's possible that Memori's status effects are different from the weak ones that are native to this world. Even if he can defend himself with his spells, it will do him no good if he ends up running out of mana to use them. He only has 1 mana point left, so he uses it to cast poison on the monster, and once he does this, the monster begins to slowly die. In addition to having a high success rate, Memori's spells also have a really long duration, so he can just sit back and wait for the monster to die. He now has 0 mana left, and he tries to use his status effects again. But still, he doesn't get much time to recover as the first monster has caught up to him. The paralysis effect he cast earlier must have worn off, but even if he has no mana left, no one will come to save him, so Memori is prepared to fight in order to survive. He attempts to paralyze the monster, but it fails as the same skill cannot be applied to a target in quick succession. Instead, he uses a sleep skill, causing the monster to collapse. Seeing no restriction on stacking effects, he then uses poison to finish it off. However, he is running low on mana, and continuing to use his skills will eventually deplete his stamina. Additionally, there are still many more monsters for him to face. Memori keeps on using paralyze effect on the monsters, and eventually he managed to stop all of them, but he's almost out of his mana too. Even more monsters keep on coming for him, but he doesn't have any choice but to keep using paralyze until he can't take it anymore. But after a little bit he reaches his limit, and as it looks like at the end for him, but luckily the system tells him he has leveled up, reaching level 258, and both his mana and stamina are replenished. He is confused what happened at first, but then he notices the dead monster and realizes he got experience by that, and as he continues to spam paralysis his skill skill level gets up, leading him to believe he can upgrade it. With his paralysis level reaching 2, he notices he can paralyze multiple monsters at once, and he paralyzes them and thinks that only the goddess isn't affected by his skills, since to all the monsters in the ruins it worked 100%. He then uses poison to finish them off, and his skill level reaches 2, and he realizes that all these monsters look like experience to him. Memori checks his status window and notices that his stats are significantly higher than when he first arrived, with his mana now exceeding 8,000. Mana is his lifeline in this dire situation. Taking a break, he sits down and waits for the poison to take effect. As the monsters die one by one, Memori's level continues to rise. By the time he reaches level 500, he feels confident that he can escape the ruins and prepares to deal with the remaining monsters. However, after the monsters see that he doesn't struggle to kill them, they start running away for their lives. Now that the area is safe, he takes a cloak and a blade from the ruins and then walks to find the exit. He comes across many monsters but manages to end them. He then realizes that he has no food and thinks he is going to starve, but he remembers the monsters he killed previously looked like chickens, so he goes back to them. He reaches for their eyes since their bodies are so hard, and when he tries to taste one, he immediately throws up, realizing their bodies are completely made of acid. He then lies on the floor without any strength left, but notices his special item changing color. He tries to put some mana into it. The bag suddenly gets heavy, and he sees that the bag has created food for him. He starts eating in a rush and saves some of it in case it doesn't produce any more. As days continue to pass inside the ruins, Memori has grown accustomed to committing mass monster genocide with his skills, but he starts worrying that he might be losing his humanity because of it. Back on Earth, after suffering abuse at the hands of his stepfather, Memori was on the verge of starting a murderous villainous path right then and there. However, before he could lose his sense of humanity, he was rescued by his aunt and uncle, who took him in and gave him a sense of normalcy. From them, he learned empathy and believed he had become a normal person like they were. But now, as he stares at the mountain of corpses beneath his feet, he feels nothing at all. There's no going back to who he was before, so Memori just accepts that he's a psychopath now and moves on. As he moves on, he comes across an eyeball monster, but he immediately manages to bring it down. As he continues forward, he comes across a door with a gemstone on it and decides to infuse it with his mana. When he steps inside, he finds two skeletons and realizes they must have chosen to face death together, perhaps also victims of the evil goddess's disposal. He examines their belongings and finds a bag filled with gemstones. He apologizes to the skeletons for taking their gemstones with him in the surface. As he explores other rooms, he comes across one that requires a large amount of mana to open. Inside, he finds a skeleton and a note beside it. The note reveals that the skeleton belonged to Anglin, the great sage and former hero of darkness, the same one Vicious mentioned as the strongest of them all. In the letter, Anglin explains that he was forcibly brought down there by Vicious because she no longer needed him. Though he was powerful enough to survive this long, he couldn't escape, so he left a message to help whoever might make it this far. Vicious may have claimed the demon lord was evil, but in Memori's eyes, she is just as bad. Though Memori is not much better, as his only goal is to get revenge on her, even if it means destroying the world. Dilutes Anglin's corpse. Memori finds a book of forbidden arts filled with recipes for medicine and instructions for magic tools that could be useful later, so he decides to keep it. He also discovers a scroll of forbidden magic, though he doesn't understand what it says. However, considering that a great sage like Anglin kept it hidden until his last moments, it must be incredibly powerful, perhaps even strong enough to help Memori eventually defeat the goddess if he can ever decipher it. With this in mind, Memori is almost ready to leave. He takes his clock because his is ugly. As he glances at his book again, he notices a warning in it that cautions about a creature called the Soul Eater, the very beast responsible for killing everyone in the ruins. Memori continues navigating through the ruins until he comes across a door that he believes might lead to the surface. He then realizes that if the door is there, the Soul Eater must be close by as well. Checking his stats, Memori feels confident that his high level, gained from defeating numerous monsters, should be enough to take on the Soul Eater. Eventually, Memori encounters a horrifying face that he assumes belongs to the Soul Eater. As he attempts to use his paralysis skill, the moment he steps out of cover, the Soul Eater shoots a laser, striking his hand. This is the first time anything has been able to interrupt his paralysis ability. He also realizes that the gemstone on the creature's forehead is the key to escaping. To activate his skill, Memori needs to speak it aloud and be within a certain range, but none of that will matter if the Soul Eater can attack him before he finishes casting the spell. As Memori is still trying to figure out his next move, the Soul Eater bursts through the wall and heads straight for him, forcing Memori into a fight. Meanwhile, outside the ruins, a girl is fleeing from her pursuers and unwittingly hides nearby. Completely unaware of the intense battle happening inside, the Soul Eater approaches Memori. He's puzzled as to why it hasn't fired its lasers yet. His question is answered when the Soul Eater spits out purple goo that takes the form of humans. These are the souls of the people the Soul Eater has previously killed, and they are now being forced to attack Memori. Though he paralyzes them, he hesitates to use poison because they were once human, even though they've become monstrous. The Soul Eater seems to enjoy watching Memori struggle, knowing that his moral hesitation will prevent him from attacking the souls and that Memori Memori can't strike the Soul Eater directly without it responding too quickly. Memori begins to cry, saying he doesn't want to harm others, and his aura weakens with each tear. The Soul Eater takes pleasure in his apparent breakdown, but it's all a ruse. Memori seizes the opportunity to paralyze the Soul Eater, knowing he couldn't have done so without first lulling it into a false sense of security. Now that the Soul Eater is immobilized, Memori abandons any concern for the souls. Despite his attempts to live a law-abiding life, the reality is that these soul puppets were trying to kill him. Without hesitation, he poisons them. The Soul Eater struggles to move, frustrated at being defeated by Memori, revealing that powerful monsters can attempt to resist his paralysis, but doing so causes them additional harm. However, Memori doesn't want to waste any more time, so he casts poison on the Soul Eater, ultimately destroying it. Once it's gone, the souls it had consumed are freed. They appear before Memori to thank him for releasing them, expressing no resentment about him taking their belongings. Among them, Angan, one of the souls, makes a single request. He asks Memori to defeat the goddess and avenge them all. The souls of the dead then pass on, and although Memori usually wouldn't accept such a request without some form of payment, he was already planning to take her down anyway. With the final monster defeated, Memori can now open the door and start his quest for revenge on the surface. Meanwhile, his classmates remain busy hunting to level up.